I think a lot of people like to live in this ideal world. In HR, we have to live in the real world.
Okay, so you wouldn't fire a rep who tried to bury a fifth of liquor outside the Jurassic Park ride at Universal Studios.
I've come across a lot of crazy HR stories, but nothing like that before.
Yeah, we've got some sales kickoff stories here that are going to blow your mind.
I'm noticing a theme with all of these sales situations.
Honest question. Are the anonymous employee feedback forms actually anonymous?
Well...
Demoted.
Ladies and gentlemen, Motorheads, welcome to Demoted. Good news, bad news situation. Bad news, Natalie's not here. She's traveling the world. She's busy. She's got shit to do. Great news, I'm not alone. So you don't have to hear me ramble on about some nonsense. I am here with Amy Lentz, Chief People Officer of Tom's, aka HackYourHR, on all social media channels. We'll get into some of that stuff later, but we are talking HR today. And it's not your typical run-of-the-mill HR stuff. As you know, Demoted is famous for savage work stories, ridiculous office confessions, things of that nature. But I really do want to dive into what the hell HR does do besides tell people no or you can't have fun and things like that. But first of all, Amy, welcome to Demoted.
Thank you. You said good news, bad news. I'm thinking, is that really good news that you're hanging out with HR right now?
I have not had a lot of great experiences with HR, as you can imagine, but nothing terrible. I got walked around the park once because of the corporate bro thing. They found out about it and were like, what the hell are you doing?
Did they fire you?
No, they made me sign a bunch of legal stuff that said I cannot disparage the company. I have to get release forms for anybody who acts in it. I can't use like logos or anything. All things I was already doing. So it was totally fine. But I did eventually get the ban hammer one day, just out of nowhere. Chief legal, our general counsel sent me an email like, hereby decreeing you are no longer allowed to shoot in the office. I was like, what the fuck? What happened? And then apparently I was fostering an unsafe work environment due to my videos. So that did happen.
I'm familiar with that language. Yes.
And we're going to get into this. I mean, like, here's the thing. I have to imagine HR, and maybe I'm wrong, but HR is a lot like sales where nobody grows up wanting to go into sales. Like you weren't like, Mom, when I grow up, like I want to be like a chief people officer. So like, what series of mistakes did you make to get here? Like, let's talk about your early career that led to this point, if you will.
Yeah. So I did not grow up as a little girl wanting to work in human resources. I know.
What?
Shocking. The day I turned 16, I got a job at Starbucks. I kept that job for 2 years. Maybe still to this day, that was my favorite job. I loved working at Starbucks. You could solve problems as a barista.
Okay.
I had no interest in becoming a supervisor, becoming a key holder, becoming a store manager. Holder? I think you just hold the keys to the store.
You just hold the keys to the store.
Yeah. And the safe.
Feels important.
No, so I was a barista. I was a nanny. There was one semester in college where I took all night classes so that I could work a marketing job for a chiropractor. Okay. So I've always had a knack for marketing, but I actually majored in human and organizational development, which is the psychology of people in the workplace. So there's pre-med, pre-law degrees. This was a pre-human resources degree.
Wow. An accident or just like you're interested in it or like?
I was interested in it.
You were interested.
It was at Vanderbilt and it was known as like the coloring book degree because we did a lot of presentations and had a lot of group projects.
That's my kind of work.
I could see you crushing it. Yeah. Most popular degree there. A lot of people went into consulting. I almost went and worked at Deloitte and decided to go into the nonprofit
Shout out Natalie.
space.
Went to Deloitte.
Shout out Natalie. Yep. Yes. Love that I can stand in her place for a hot second. No, I worked in the nonprofit space, effectively, titles aside, as a project manager. So what do we need to get done? Amy, execute it.
Right.
I pivoted to working in various small companies that needed operational change. And here comes the corporate speak.
Okay.
Someone the other day said, you treated your 20s like a charcuterie board, which I found hilarious. Like instead of sitting down.
I love a charcuterie board. So.
Oh, same. Instead of sitting down with a grilled cheese and just enjoying, one type, I was like, I will take that year at that company and I will try this experience over here and I will pivot to, I worked at a gym. I worked in legal recruiting. And
such a millennial job hopper. Look at you.
Oh my God. Yes.
Disgusting.
Disgusting. Truly, if an opportunity came up and it was a way for me to build a new skill, I said yes to it. And so my resume for the first handful of years very much looks like she was a job hopper, which I was. And I encourage people fresh out of school or not, fresh out of high school, to pursue what interests them.
Yep.
Say yes to everything. So that's what I did.
What about working for the government? The Obama administration.
So I worked at the White House for the trade ambassador. So the United States trade ambassador, shout out tariffs now.
Yeah, hot right now. Hot position.
Hot position. I was special assistant to the ambassador, not for too long, but every single day in an administration, especially as President Obama was coming up to the end, felt like 5 days. It was an amazing opportunity as people were taking their PTO for the first time in literally 4 to 8 years.
Yep.
I was raising my hand saying, I'll help with that. I'll edit that. I'll get in early or stay late to do that. So it was someone that I knew someone that I knew, and I got an interview and wooed my future boss, and she brought me on, and I had a really great time. But my dad was actually the mayor of my small hometown for 12 years.
Your dad was the mayor?
My dad was the mayor. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Of a little town called Mundelein, Illinois. And so I got to see up close. He was a trustee before then. He was president of the Little League. I watched him in public service my whole life. And so I saw the impact that you can make pretty immediately. Oh, do we want to have chickens in our town? No? Okay, well, trustees and a mayor makes that call. Do we want people to be able to have...
That's important shit right there. Are we going to have chickens in the town? And everyone's wondering.
Everyone's wondering.
I find myself wondering.
There you go.
Here in San Francisco, can we have chickens? I don't think we can.
If your neighbor started having bees, you'd probably not appreciate that.
Yeah.
So that gets handled in local government. So I helped him with his campaign. I worked for a Republican governor in college, and then I worked on the Hillary campaign, and then I worked for President Obama, his administration. And so I've worked across the aisle, Republican, Democrat, in the middle. And I encourage people to pursue opportunities that you can talk about at dinner parties for the rest of your life.
Yep. Everybody needs a fun fact, and God knows that's like one of the most stressful things ever when you go around and have to say a fun fact.
My fun fact is I worked at the White House, not in. People get very particular. If you work in government, were you at a place or were you in the place?
Sure.
So I was at.
That makes sense. And then so when you ended up going to TFA as well, Teach for America.
Yep.
But not as a teacher, right? Like on the admin side. Is that when you decided to, like, HR was sort of the path?
With my degree, I studied the psychology of people in the workplace. And so I would take a whole class called small group behavior and get assigned into a group. And then the class for a whole semester, 3 days a week, was understanding how people interact with each other when you have tasks at hand, when you're under stress. And so I really liked that, but I pushed up against HR. I thought, that would be too easy, right? I wanted to go into strategy and operations and data and analytics and
you didn't want to
just
fuck with people and see how they manage the stress.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds kind of fun.
Yeah. So Teach for America has a 2-year teaching program where people that don't have a teaching degree teach in the classroom for 2 years, and you get training. It's a phenomenal program. I did not do that program. I worked directly under the chief strategy officer, and I was there for 4 years. In my 4 years, I had 4 different bosses. And so I would see a strategy get put down on paper, maybe put into a presentation, and then the role would turn over. And so I effectively was, again, kind of in a project manager, executor, support role. And then I took over and effectively was a chief of staff for one of my bosses.
Yep.
And then what I did in my free time in between bosses was I would partner with different teams that the chief executive would be leading, but without that person, I stayed on. And so what am I going to do? They didn't let me go. I wasn't part of a reorg ever. And so I proactively sought to understand problems that were happening. So for example, I partnered with a team and we partnered with the human resources department and made sure everyone had a job description that was audited, that was reflective of people's work so that they got paid for the work that they were doing. And that was the introduction to HR formally, where I thought, oh, HR really does hold the keys to people's pay and titles and growth.
Right.
That's interesting. And so COVID hit and I pursued consulting opportunities or responded to people saying, hey, have you work in operations and strategy. Would you want to help me stand up this startup idea? Like I mentioned earlier in my career, I worked for smaller companies and I would essentially see a bunch of problems, present solutions, project manage them to completion, and then say, I'm going to go work for this other company.
Right.
Another cheese on the charcuterie board that I wanted to try. And so Teach for America really was a way for me to exercise not having a title that reflected the influence that I tried to have and then did have. And then it allowed me the flexibility working on the West Coast for an East Coast team to be done with work effectively around 2:30 or 3. And then for the rest of the day, I decided to do consulting work on the side, mainly either standing up an HR department, getting payroll in place, developing a learning and development program, a performance review program. And so from there, a friend of mine had my role as chief people officer, head of HR at Tom's Shoes, the original buy a pair, give a pair model, effectively giving a third of profits away. Effectively, it's a lot of profit to be giving away. Really cool. And so I interviewed for 4 months and got the job, and I've been there for about 4 years now. There's
like a veil over HR and people's understanding of HR. And most of us who think HR, we're just like, fuck that. That sounds terrible. I can't be myself around them. Like, what does HR do on a day-to-day basis? I mean, truly. I mean, I think all I think of is open enrollment and hiring and then dealing with problems. You know what I mean? Like strategy, I know there's a strategy component to it. I don't know anything about it.
In my role, I'm an executive, so I support my CEO. As I see it, a CEO should have a right hand, left hand in a CFO, chief finance officer, and then a chief people officer. So you need to understand the numbers and then you need to understand the people. Something I like to say is every business problem is a people problem, because if you have a system that's out of place, if something's inefficient, it all goes back to, well, who's managing it? And so are you being reactive or are you being proactive? And so effectively, I could use a lot of corporate speak and say, I strategize and make sure that, problems don't happen. But the way that I've approached it is, how can I anticipate a problem and then provide a solution to a problem that doesn't even exist yet? So that's what I do for a CEO.
Do you have an example of what that might be?
Yeah. So succession planning. So people quitting or looking ahead and seeing, this person is really underperforming. We're going to have to let them go unless they change, and here are all the reasons why we don't think they'll change. And so what are we going to do? Or, if I'm marketing, I'm just, pulling an example. If a marketing campaign is spending too much and it's a leader that consistently spends too much and doesn't listen to the data, okay, well, something has to give. And so what are we going to do about it? And so as I understand, not just, at Tom's, let me speak to phone calls I take and DMs that I get and friends that call me, a CEO needs someone to say, this is what I'm noticing. This is what I think is going to happen. And here are the 3 different things that we can do about it. What should we do about it? A marketing leader, I'm picking on marketing.
Yeah, no, as you should. I mean, fuck them. They're always spending too much money. They're cost centers. They work 4 hours a day. All those things.
All those things, all the stereotypes. Any leader, if a leader doesn't proactively pinpoint their issue, it's partly, you could say, my job to make sure that the CEO knows about it and has a list of options for what to do about it. So I think a lot of my job is coaching day to day. It's coaching my CEO. It's providing a safe space, as we like to say, to provide psychological safety for my
safe
executive
space, not
peers.
The sales floor.
Not the sales floor.
Not a safe space.
Love me a good VP of sales. Shout out to mine. And it's funny you say that because sales really is held to a different expectation as far as I'm concerned. It's kind of like
say more, lower, higher, different.
It's like you guys get swag. You guys get the biggest receipts approved for dinners. You guys, fly business because so-and-so can fly next to you. Right. I'm seeing your face know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, well, because we're the best, we're the most important. I mean, no one else has a job if sales doesn't do theirs, It's just like, got to put them up on a pedestal. I feel like they get more leeway when they're kind of HR nightmares.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's hard to fire your best salesperson when they're driving so much rev.
Yep.
So much revy.
Yep. And then product would say, well, without product, you don't need a sales team.
Of course they would.
Right. And then marketing, right? If you don't have product. And so I will say it is funny because, when you make your numbers, sales is the first and the most confident to say that's us.
Yeah.
And then
because it is. Because it is. Yes. Everything else that can support sales success. I don't disagree that like a great marketing department, there's nothing like it. Never seen one, but there's nothing like it, I've heard. And, product, you sell the dream before you sell the product. Right? Like every startup starts as like a concept that we're trying to sell and validate before we even build it.
Yeah.
You do have to have a product eventually, but I'm just saying you could sell it before it exists. Or I can go on ChatGPT and build it.
I will say this. If you want to crush it in your job, whatever job it is that you have, become a better storyteller, which is to be a effective salesperson, right? You're not selling, you're educating. You're providing the value that the person on the other end of the call or the other end of the fancy dinner is looking for.
Yep.
So back to the job I took in marketing for a chiropractor. I was 19 years old working full time to sell chiropractic services. And I realized I shouldn't sell a solution. I should make people aware of the problem they have.
Right. Your back is shaped like a shrimp. You look like a C.
Yes.
You look like the letter C at your desk.
And those people became aware of speaking of someone with scoliosis, that's why I was at the chiropractor so much and such a great salesperson for them and marketer. No, but if you, the general public become an effective storyteller, seller of what value you bring to your company, you will always have a job.
Right. So I like to say I help people come to my conclusion.
Love that. That is so on brand for you. Yes, I love that. Going back to what HR does every day, we do protect the interests of the company. So does every other department. What we really do every day is try to understand the goals of every department and alleviate any roadblocks that department has to meet their goals. So if that's a low performer, if that's a high performer with an attitude issue, that's a coaching conversation.
Right.
If it's, I want to fire this high performer, I don't have anything on them. They've gotten glowing reviews the last 5 years, but they're an asshole. What do I do? That's a coaching conversation.
Give 'em a raise.
So
give them a raise and tell them keep doing them. Give them a desk in the corner.
A lot of people do. Yeah. And it's the nuts and bolts, right? Like you mentioned, payroll, recruiting. But it is a lot of people in HR get a bad reputation for being sticklers and rule followers. I think the reason why I really enjoy it is because I take that rule book and go, well, why is that the rule? Let's change it.
Right. I think the client dinner should be at least $2,000 if you want to win deals.
Completely. That bottle of fancy wine. That bottle of fancy wine is necessary. Yes.
Great.
I can't talk about everything with everyone, right? So,
Sure.
Amy, how are you spending your time? Everyone else has their calendars open. I'm just speaking in generals.
Yeah.
I've heard people say, HR doesn't have their calendar open, or we don't know how they spend their time. A lot of the time, it's just troubleshooting interpersonal issues that come up across departments, within departments.
Right.
If you're owned
Sean's
by a board.
been giving Nancy a little too much tood.
There you go.
And we got to work on his tone.
Yep, exactly.
Honest question. Are the anonymous feedback forms anonymous, like truly anonymous?
Sometimes.
Right. Okay. So how can we differentiate? How do we know? Like, I mean, at this point, it's kind of just better safe than sorry. Just assume it's not anonymous.
So I use Lattice. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, yeah.
Tech? Okay.
Shout out sales reps from Lattice.
Shout out Lattice. Work with me here.
I'm sure they love to send you emails.
I'm a customer. So in an all staff, hey staff, I'm going to show you my admin side of Lattice. Yeah. I shared my screen and I said, this is exactly what I see. So I think if a company is going to do an engagement survey, you've got to show the back end. So for example, hey, what a setting we have, I only know what team you're on unless at least five people on your team have responded. So if you're on a team with 4 people or less, I truly don't even know what answers to attach to what team. But if there's a threshold of people, we think that's enough people to have your answers get attached to a department.
I see.
So Lattice is a great example of a platform that truly provides the anonymity. And something that I said to all of my staff is, we pay for you to trust us. I could build this on a Google form, for example. Right. I'm spending thousands of dollars to build your trust so that you know that it truly is anonymous. So to answer your question, are they truly anonymous? Maybe. And you should and I think people should put the onus on their HR department to prove.
Show us the back end. Yeah. Show us. Yeah. I ain't saying shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then people will, if someone always uses, like a ... it'll be all over
Writing
their
styles.
responses. And I'm like, I've spent 3 hours collectively with you complaining about the lack of anonymity. It is. And now you yourself are calling yourself out.
Right. They write 4 paragraphs and they just sign Mark at the end.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's some stuff like that. Yeah. So before we get into some wild stories for you to analyze, do you have any sort of crazy HR stories from your career? Maybe it's the places you've consulted for. You've seen a lot of organizations, big, small. Yeah. Any come to mind?
One in particular comes to mind. You got to get ready for this one.
Okay. I'm going to
This was up. Like, I don't know this person. A close friend of mine said, Amy, I know everyone asks to pick your brain, but I have someone that really needs to pick your brain. Okay. So I get on the phone and he says, so I have this situation. Someone on my team came to me convinced that someone else used the anonymous STD website and sent them a text message alerting them that they have an STD. Have you heard of this?
No. Oh, wait. Okay, wait. So so actually this kind of makes sense. If you have an STD, you can send it to someone anonymously.
Yes.
Like one of your previous partners and let them know.
You can.
Wow. So, okay. Interesting.
This guy calls me. He says, someone on my team came to me and is convinced that someone else is the one that sent this anonymous text. What do I do? And I said, well, there's no way to prove because it truly is anonymous because it's, some helpful website that wants to help people that get their diagnosis and inform their people. But you can put in anyone's phone number. Right. You can just pick someone and ruin their day potentially. And it's not even true. That's so he wanted me to coach him on how to essentially let his team member know, dude, you might have an STD. And now I know that you guys
hooked up.
Relations happening on the team and you just added yourself. And so that was a pretty crazy HR consulting call.
Was there a resolution? Did they did they go talk about it? I
encouraged him to encourage that guy to go get tested to find out for himself. And he came back. He came back and said he tested clear. And I encouraged him to just tell his direct report to go get tested. And then if something came up, to inform any partners that he did have. The tests came back clean. And so there was no need to have that conversation. But as far as I found out via a text, and this is years ago, so there's no way for me to, don't come at me if this was you.
Going straight to this STD site and sending it to all my enemies.
Oh my God. No, but for real. I thought, I had a moment. I'm like, should I share this on the air?
That's like so specific and hilarious. And it's just like people find a way to do stupid shit. People just find a way. Like Hollywood couldn't write that, you just had to. No. You had to live it to even think of that.
A lot of the crazy HR, Amy, tell us a story, comes down to people's EQ just just being low. And something that I like to say is you get it or you don't get it.
Right.
And so when you deal with people that don't get it, they just don't get it. You got to give them grace.
And you guys deal with people all day long.
And we deal with people. Yeah.
People going to do people stuff, and that's what happens.
The day to day, my husband will walk by my office and, the faces that I'll get when I'm on a call, like, I'm going to close your door, because of the things that people, and it's not even, I'm not talking crazy stuff. It's just the complaints people have. It is an emergency at 10 p.m. Can you talk? He walks by and you're like, really,
Jonathan, we've got reports that you've been like loudly moaning when you eat your lunch. I just want to know, is this something that is happening, not happening? I just want to get you're not in trouble. Mm-hmm. But people are saying that you're moaning really loudly when you take bites of your lunch.
I do have a qualm with women's clothing companies giving influencers office wear, I say in quotes, that are like mini skirts and spaghetti
crop tops
and like the cropped blazers. Leave all of that. Not like, save that for your Zoom call. Wear your mini skirt to your Zoom calls.
Yeah.
Don't
If
be
they
too
want to send me
surprised.
some stuff, feel free. Let me know. I'll try it on. I'll wear a crop top blazer.
Yep.
And we'll go from there.
Natalie's clothes. There you go.
Yeah.
Her clothing.
I haven't seen Natalie yet in a crop top blazer, but you know what? She's fashionista. As soon as it's in, she's going to wear it. So luckily it's easy for me. Throw on a blazer, throw on a white shirt. It's all good.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got some submitted stories that were submitted to the pod. I'm going to read them. We're just going to talk about them. This is what the people love, this type of shit. And it'll be interesting to have your perspective just being on the HR side. So here's the first one, submitted by someone named HR Guy, real original. Okay.
Love it.
I worked as the HR guy for a company that hired entry-level phone reps to help manage customer leads. Think low skill, low or no education, often criminal history. We lost a contract and laid off 60 reps. After they left, the managers were cleaning the reps' desks. They brought me a notebook found in between two cubicle walls. It was a contract book for a sex club. They had written out rules like no blood, ask permission, safe words, members' names, invited guests. I will never see employees the same. Did you run into any sort of internal sex rings during your times?
This question was not part of the will you be on my podcast.
I mean, look, you got to deal with some crazy shit. And this is what you would have to deal with.
So I have not, despite being based in Los Angeles, California.
Yeah.
I will say people have asked me what it's like to find out, like I just mentioned, are people hooking up in the office? I'm sure I'm not hearing about it. HR is not hearing about it generally. So I unfortunately don't have any crazy sex ring employee stories to share, but I know I'm boring.
Sad.
I know.
Really sad.
But that's a pretty amazing write-in. I mean,
no, it is.
If I was HR, I mean, that employee who had that notebook sounds like they were being safe about it, right?
Which we appreciate. We love that.
You got to be safe.
Consent, all that stuff. But let's say some of those reps are still at the company. Do you have to go interrogate them and be like, sex ring, totally fine as long as it's not during work?
Well, but he was working on it during work hours at work. So there you go.
Oh.
And that's where, when your company says, don't do any non-work related initiatives, projects on your work computer, at work, that is in your employee handbook so that if something like this happens, legal HR can swoop in and say, hey, that's not cool.
And I would be like, sorry for team building. Sorry for culture.
The wrong team. I will say, I have heard of people creating OnlyFans accounts and their employers finding their OnlyFans accounts.
Okay.
I have taken a couple calls where people have said, what do I do? And I have said, if you don't have a rule against it, then you can't act on it.
Right.
So
I say, if they came to me, I'd be like, look, I would just sign up for the medium package and see if it's worth the premium package. Like, you decide.
There you go.
I'm not here to tell you. I'm here to tell you that everyone in the office is going to find out about this.
I wouldn't
because that shit spreads instantly.
Instantly. Yeah. Yeah. I will say, you asked about, the engagement surveys. Your IT department is the one that can see everything you're doing, not HR.
Oh, okay. Right.
Not
I guess
HR.
like, Slack or Teams or, whatever. They can
We
see all
can
those.
request it. I could request to see, anyone
Right.
up to my CEO, and if I had, cause to
Right,
ask
exactly.
about
It's
it.
cause. Like people always see security cameras. I'm like, nobody looks at security cameras unless they have cause to go back and review the footage. It's like reviewing footage. Don't give them a reason to go back and find it. Now, some of my Google chats, my Slacks back in the day, I'm just hoping they were destroyed.
Well, they probably weren't.
They probably weren't. They're out there.
But I will
somewhere.
say, the last thing I ever want to do is look at anyone's Slack, Teams, email. I mean, that sounds like a headache. That is the last thing that I want to do.
That sounds fascinating to me, and I could probably, I could
Such
probably put a few books down, and the sales DMs. Oh my God, I'm sure I could see some. Really
It'd be
special
entertaining,
stuff.
but I have other entertainment avenues. Yeah.
Yes, fair. Here is another one. We've got a few actually. They're kind of short ones.
Okay.
From sales kickoffs, SKOs. And I don't know, Tom's probably doesn't do SKOs. Are you familiar with SKOs?
Not as much as you.
So basically, companies every year, it's the sales kickoff, annual sales kickoff. They fly all their sales reps into one place. They'll go through like the new marketing plan, the new product plan. They'll have speakers come in. It's kind of like a rah, here's our new sales motion, maybe some awards dinners, things like that. It's tends to be a party mixed with like some work, but you put all the salespeople together in one place. So here's the first one. SKO at Universal Studios. Company rented it out. Open bar starts in 10 minutes, but one AE is so wasted he can't wait. Decides to steal a bottle from the open bar and takes it to a park bench where a handful of other AEs drink it like hobos. Security sees them and he takes off running with the bottle. Tries to bury it in the mulch outside Jurassic Park. They check the cameras and dig it up like buried treasure. Boss put his life on the line to save his job. A year later, that rep makes President's Club.
Go him.
Go him.
Go him.
Yeah,
Sounds like a team that I would want to be on if I was in sales.
Yes, if you were in sales. And, that rep must have been performing well because if you're not, you're probably out.
See, that goes back to if someone operates in that kind of way, it all comes down to, do people like you? You can be good at your job.
Right.
If you are the rigid rule follower person that's telling on that guy, you're not going to make President's Club. You're just not. Right?
Right.
Now, if your President's Club is full of a bunch of people that, are that way, sure. But sounds like that guy knows how to have a good time.
Yep.
Sounds like that guy made a calculated decision, whether sober or not, on, how to
Burying
have
it outside Jurassic Park. Who wouldn't do that?
Who wouldn't do that? No, but, I think what we can take from this story is a lot of time people that should make things, get promoted, get the raise, don't, because they're so tunnel vision focused on what they should be doing on paper, not paying attention to the people that have influence, that do approve budgets. And in order to, get ahead, you really do need to understand, separate from titles, separate from the org chart, who has the influence and what do they appreciate in someone like me, whatever title I'm in, and how can I get ahead under their leadership?
And in some cases, that is steal liquor and bury it like outside Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Like treasure. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's another one. Similar vein. Not SKO, but President's Club in Hawaii at the nicest hotel in Hawaii. AE gets hammered, starts making people uncomfortable, and even harasses the banquet waitresses. Wanders to the lobby at 3 a.m., drops his pants, takes a shit on the floor, dropping his phone in the process, flees the scene. They figure out who it is via camera and phone, fire the next day, and send home.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do we draw the line?
Sounds about right. I think that is where the line is drawn, maybe in the lobby before and after he relieved himself. That sounds like a pretty good line.
The harassment thing is probably a quick hook. Get him out.
But there's a through line here. Alcohol. What is up with sales teams and alcohol? In Los Angeles, so many of my friends don't drink either at all or a lot, but it sounds like no one has a 2-drink rule going on in these stories.
Yeah, that tends to happen at sales kickoffs, you know, but I don't know. Drinking is just not as cool anymore.
It's not.
The youth, they're not doing it like that, like we used to.
No. No, they're not. Mm-mm.
I'm not going to lie. I am one of those people who has also been slowly moving away from alcohol. Not to say I'm not having fun. I'm actually using more often one of the sponsors of our episode, which is Cornbread. They have organic THC gummies. It's a better way to hang out, celebrate, or relax without the hangover, which is one of the big reasons why I have been moving away from alcohol. They are America's only USDA organic THC gummy. They're a 1-to-1 ratio of THC to CBD, real THC, no synthetics. I used to to try other gummies and I would get, I'm going to call it an allergic reaction, which I have never ever gotten once with cornbread. They are 100% legal hemp, fast and free shipping. So I guess my point is alcohol doesn't have to be the default anymore. So if you're looking for a healthier way to relax, you got to try cornbread THC gummies right now. Demoted listeners can save 30% on their first order. Just head to cornbreadhemp.com/demoted and use code demoted at checkout. That is cornbreadhemp.com/demoted, code demoted, cornbread hemp. This is the good life. All right, here's another one. Says SKO shared drive. SKO had one of those QR codes so everyone could upload photos of the event to a shared drive. AE uploaded his dick pic thinking it couldn't be traced back to him. It was traced back to him and he was obviously fired.
Yeah. Shared drives for photos of events where alcohol is present, I would say that's a no-go.
Like something like that, you are paid to sit in meetings and talk about that.
I'm paid to sit in meetings and talk about that.
You would be, right? Like if you're working HR
sure.
at this company, like you have to spend a couple hours the next day or whenever, like with the leadership team, like this guy uploaded a dick pic. Here it is. Whole leadership team's got to take a look. Just talk about it.
I will say that's an extreme example. I've been in meetings, years ago up to present where you can do something as small as roll your eyes, shrug your shoulders, show a bad attitude.
Right.
And I'm in the meeting cleaning it up.
Right.
I mean, if you listening, if you have an attitude problem or on your personal time action problem, like uploading a dick pic to a shared drive where your whole team sees it, you got to do better.
You got to do better.
You just got to do better.
There's a lot of stuff that really is common sense. It goes back to the EQ comment.
That's exactly right. And how do you get better at EQ? Let me ask you this. Do you think, like nature versus nurture, how do you grow in your EQ if you don't naturally get it?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I would hope that you would learn from others.
Yeah.
I would hope that others might be able to nurture you into at least some more commonsensical things, but some people just don't got it.
Yeah.
They simply don't got it.
I think that's the power of being in person at the office to take an unpopular stance, right? You didn't even bring this up, but that is, if you enter and exit a Zoom meeting, you don't get the hallway conversation with someone that's gone before you that can tell you, like nudge you, like, hey, don't chew gum. Our boss hates it. And then you show up. In person,
you can just whip it out and show people and you don't have to upload it.
Oh my God.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
That would be harassment. So does that ever turn into like legal outside of the company? Like you get fired, right? But does HR ever go to the authorities?
Yeah, if you need to.
Yeah.
I mean, something I'll say to people is we're having a confidential conversation and kind of like a therapist. Unless you tell me you're going to hurt yourself, you are being hurt or you're going to hurt someone else. This can stay between us.
Right.
Depending on the company, you can request an outside investigation. That's a buttoned up company, I would say. And it really does protect both the employee and the employer to have that in place. So if I feel like I'm being harassed, I could say, hey, I want to request an outside investigation. And then a lawyer comes in and interviews everybody.
Okay, here's a Christmas party one. Had a Christmas party where the whole company got hammered. Again, back to our alcohol theme. Again, this is just salespeople being salespeople. I got too lit and banged my SDR, dated her for 2 years. How does the dating stuff happen? Like, do you go to them and like, we kind of know you guys are dating, you should have told us? Or do you just say, okay, we're going to wait until they tell us, or we're just going to ignore it?
I think it totally depends on the leaders, right?
Okay.
And I that's a boring answer, but this is why I say proactively get to know your HR so that you can feel out what type of back end you're dealing with, right? Like, do you have a chief legal officer or is it outsourced for only when, quote unquote, bad things happen?
Right.
If you have a relationship and build rapport with your HR business partner, it's not a bad thing to be on the radar of HR so that if something like this happens, they have familiarity with you and it's not just, okay, so-and-so's dating. It's essentially what risk is there to people dating? Is it a boss and, traditionally
the subordinate, like boss dynamic. You got it.
A lot of, there are a lot of successful relationships and marriages that come out of the workplace.
A lot of them. Like I did a whole like Q&A on my story. It was like, how many of you have hooked up with a coworker? And the amount of people who were like, I did and I married them was like actually super high. It was probably 20%.
Really?
It was so, I mean, think
20%?
about it. It was like of the people who were sending me stuff. So like, obviously it's, but I mean, where do you spend the most time in your life? Usually at your job, like with these people, like, I don't know. I mean, I was at Oracle and I was everywhere. Everyone was, not me, but everybody was banging everybody. That was
not you.
Not me, but everybody was doing that. So like, I don't know, a lot of relationships coming out of that place. Now, before we get into Promoted, Demoted, I have to tell you about this game-changing product that both I and Natalie use before a night out with drinks, and it is called pre-alcohol. We are talking about Z-Biotics. People, Natalie and I were massive fans even before they decided to sponsor the show. What is Z-Biotics, you ask? Well, it is a pre-alcohol probiotic drink. It is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. And it's a buildup of this byproduct, not dehydration, common misconception, that is to blame for rough days after drinking. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. So just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. So drink responsibly and you will feel your best tomorrow. All right, go to zbiotics.com/demoted to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use code DEMOTED at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you are unsatisfied for any reason at all, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember, head to zbiotics.com/demoted and use code demoted at checkout for 15% off. Let's get into Promoted, Demoted. Do we like it? Do we not like it? You know, we can riff on it a little bit. We can not. It can be really basic, but obviously we want your perspective as an HR leader. So the first one here is changing your job title on your resume.
Promote it with a caveat.
Go on.
So I think it's fine to change your title if it reflects the scope of work that you did. And if it's not as granular as senior director versus VP. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if you managed all of social media, you can say you were the social media manager. I wouldn't say, and this is getting really granular, manager, social media, because in the world of titles and compensation, you have pre-comma, post-comma compensation analysis. But if you did work and you want to reflect that work that you did with a title, I think there's a way to delicately reflect it on your resume. But again, I wouldn't call yourself head of, if you worked at a startup and that's an actual title. But if you worked for Oracle using your former employer and you were technically, a sales manager, but you also did fill in the blank, you can say that you managed fill in the blank.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. But, every salesperson's like director of Northwest Division, managed services of LATAM and APAC, and just a bunch of bullshit. But I
will say something that I hate when people say titles don't matter. And it's always executives that say that. Right.
Who have the title.
Who have the title.
Yeah.
I have always cared about my title. Yeah. Always.
Yeah. Same.
And I will say with an executive title, I will share that it doesn't, what matters on a resume will get you the interview, but the title won't get you the job. Right. So like a title on a resume will get you the interview, but if throughout the interview process, the person interviewing you comes to find out, oh, they really didn't do what they said that they did, you're not going to get the job.
But will the title get you more money?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was always my assumption.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, we're talking about people approving things, but I think it is worth investing in a resume consultant to take a look, or throw it into ChatGPT, give it to someone like me, not me. Don't come DMing me asking me. I will say no. I won't even say it. I won't even see it.
You get thousands
never mind.
of those. Yeah,
never mind.
Okay, here's another one though. Promoted, Demoted, open to work on your LinkedIn profile. This is a controversial one, and a lot of people got opinions on it.
I know. I don't like it.
I'm guessing you're going to take my stance in the millennials, what I'll call the millennial stance, but I want to hear it.
I don't like it. What do you think?
I don't like it.
I don't like it.
I don't like it.
Wait. Oh, why don't you like it?
I know it's not desperate, but it feels like it. Mm-hmm. It feels like for some reason, there's like an element of shame to it for me. Mm-hmm. Look, if it like works, I think there is a setting now where you can just have it say open to work to recruiter titles. where it doesn't say it's like your whole network.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Which is good, right? Because like I am open to like new opportunities.
This goes back to like the reality that we're living in and then the ideal world that we can talk about wanting to live in.
Yeah.
So it's human nature to want something that you can't have, right? Or that's a little more difficult to have. If you're open to work, you're communicating, I can be halved.
Right.
I'm available. And without knowing the context for why that person is open to work, you just know they don't have a job right now. Or if they do, I don't know if I've ever known anyone that has had a job that says they're open to work. That's kind of an F you to your current employer.
Yeah, see, I actually assumed kind of like a mix. In my head, I'm like, you're saying you're open to work and that's just like a bad look to your employer if they can like see that. But that's then like you said,
that's a no-go.
Like you said, it's your desk. You're like, you don't have a job.
Here's the thing. If you got laid off, and I have executed multiple layoffs, big, small, global, department specific, I can say it is not personal. It personally affects you, but it really can be a numbers game. Okay. That said, if someone gets impacted and they were highest performer on their team and they throw up an open to work banner, if I, by human nature, look at that profile and the exact same profile photo, exact same everything on LinkedIn, I'm going to think, why did this person get impacted? Right. I'm going to go with this person. And I'm not saying I just think based on what I've heard and as a human can say, we're drawn to something we can't have. And if something immediately without context or a story can be halved, it's just, I'm going to demote it.
I'm going to demote it too, but it gives me a follow-up question. Like, there's been so many layoffs, especially in tech right now. Like so many people are getting affected. As someone who hires people, like how do you view layoffs? Like folks who have been impacted? Like, is it the story they tell? Like, do you care? Like in sales, at least it's almost a badge of honor in so many ways. Like so many people have like sales teams they scale, they like reduce, like it's just kind of the nature of sales. But maybe in other roles, like how do you sort of see it as someone who hires, like understanding that just so many people are going through it, like who are plenty good performers?
Yeah. I think the 20-second story that you share in the interview and the bullet point on your resume for how you got impacted is very important. It's very important. So when you do get laid off, I encourage people to ask why. Why am I getting laid off? Why did the company make this decision? So if your company was, negative $5 million in profit and that's the reason, okay, well, great. Company wasn't profitable. They targeted every single department. And I would mention, the performance rating you got. It wasn't performance related. They based it on tenure. Whatever the story is, share that story to alleviate any question marks. I don't hold it against people. Certainly not. And other people will. Right. Other people will hear that and go, oh, bullshit. Yeah. I personally wouldn't have picked my highest performer. So another company, another leader must also view it the same way I did. So I don't believe this person. Right. Well, I mean, like, you look at sales for big companies, like they do lay off good performers of certain teams. Like it's just, again, the numbers game is the numbers game. Yeah. And so you lose good people. But I will say, I've gotten DMs before from leaders that have said, I have 10 sales reps. They all effectively do the same thing with the same job description. And I need to get rid of 3 of them. How do I pinpoint the 3 when essentially they all have the exact same job? They might, service different clients, et cetera. And that's where, let's say you have a team of 10 people and you need to pick 3. And essentially it's, do I base it on tenure? Do I base it on the difficulty of clients that they have? How do I base it? You, as much as it's not personal, if there's any subjectivity to having to choose, you're not going to choose your highly engaged, high-performing, positive attitude, can-do person. Right. That is not the person who is saying, I have this arbitrary boundary that I have made that goes against the culture, that doesn't take into account my manager's leadership style or preferences for, when I work. And I think that that's really important as the job market is really tough. It's what hill are you going to die on? Promoted, demoted, baby registries. You are on leave right now. You're first, right? I have a little boy. Little boy. Same. I'm not on leave. I don't get leave. My boss is an asshole. It's my wife. There you go. Yep.
How old?
8 weeks tomorrow.
8 weeks. So I'm like 1 week ahead of you, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Baby
Look at us.
registries.
Congrats to us.
Yeah, congrats to us.
Did you sleep last night?
Not great.
I slept, but not great.
Yeah. Night before was great. Last
Okay.
night, not so great.
I just came out of the trenches.
Yeah.
I was in the trenches for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
6 of the 8 weeks.
Are you figuring it out?
Figuring it out. I have a nanny
Yeah.
here today. She's taking care of Leo. I have a very supportive husband who wants to jump up in the middle of the night and help. And most all times, there's just no point because he just wants me. You know, I mean, you're kind of pointless for the first however many months. You got to just take care of Becca and taking care of baby is taking care of mom. So
yeah, totally.
Baby registries. I didn't do a baby registry.
Really?
I highly recommend getting a registry.
Yeah.
So I thought I've had all these people show up for me in my life. They've, gifted me things, celebrated milestones, the amount of wedding events that I had. And then, a few years later, I turn around and I say, hey, I need you to buy me bottles and, baby stuff. So I opted out of a baby registry and a baby shower.
Wow.
And the amount of blankets that I have from people.
That's why you got to do the registry so they know what else you need.
You got to do the registry. Yeah.
I
have like 15 blankets. And so I think a baby registry is great, but you got to do things at all price points. And in the days of TikTok, everyone's going to get the same stuff. Yeah. Did you guys do a registry?
We did a baby registry and, I can't say I took point on that, but I'm glad we did it. And now I've learned more about the baby economy than I ever cared to. Let's get into some Dear Demoteds here. We'll do 1 or 2 and then we'll get you out of here. I know we're already over time. So, if you need to go, just yell at me. But you're on leave. So what do you got to do? Baby sleep right now?
Probably not. Probably screaming.
Screaming, yeah. Well, yeah, that's why we have headphones in. So
yeah, exactly.
I've been at the same company for about 4 years now. I love the team and the company. We have good benefits, but the pay sucks. However, I feel stuck about asking for a raise because due to my ADHD, I wasn't performing well over the last 2 years and have been placed on a PIP. And I got out of it, but after got a final warning, so feel like I'm hanging on by a thread and trying my hardest, but have no leg to stand on. What should I do? The job market is rough. Okay. Long story short, this person is on a PIP and wants to ask for a raise. Absolute crazy talk?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
crazy talk.
For sure.
I can answer that one.
You want to know why?
Yes, you don't have a leg to stand on.
You don't have a leg to stand on. Here is what comes across my desk, my proverbial desk, my inbox in meetings. Every great leader advocates for their team.
Yep.
And the way that they effectively advocate for people to get raises and promotions and title increases and, approving the business class ticket, if you're on sales, is a highly engaged, highly productive employee that adds value. Right. Now, if this person, and I can relate to with ADHD tendencies, if this person wasn't performing for 2 years, got put on a PIP and has a final warning and wants to ask for a raise, you're barking up the wrong tree. You are in a system that has targeted you as not adding the value that they need you to add at baseline. If you get put on a PIP, you're underperforming it, in relation to that baseline.
Sure.
You got out of the PIP with a final warning, tone deaf to ask for a raise.
I would agree.
Job market's tough, but if you want to make more, I would say look outside your company.
Yeah. Or simply start performing a lot better for the next year or so and then maybe make that ask.
Yeah, at least a year. And track your progress, set measurable goals, check in, even monthly. Hey, here are the goals we set. Here's how I set them. Next month, hey, here's how I adapted. Here's everything I did. Here's how I'm going above and beyond.
Right.
But, people ask, how do I rebuild my reputation? Well, you just got to rebuild it. You can't cheat time on rebuilding a reputation.
Happy Tuesday, Motorheads. Vroom, vroom, bitches. I need some advice on speaking up in the corporate setting as I am still very young in my career. Big Four audit here. So here's the problem. I am on an understaffed engagement team and I feel like I'm the only one being vocal about it, but I am just a wee little associate. I want to start by saying I 100% acknowledge that the busy season is bad in Big Four. The last busy season, we were consistently at the office until 2 a.m., many times later for 2 months. I like working and I work my ass off and get the results, and I'm on track for an early promotion, so I don't think I'm just whining because we had to work hard. After the busy season, we had multiple people leave the firm because the busy season broke them. We were able to replace them, but now the team is very green/inexperienced and therefore inefficient. I know that busy season is going to suck again this year, but the partners or firm or whatever the powers that be will not give us more people. I am the only one who's outspoken about it. On one hand, I don't want to be labeled as high maintenance or a complainer or whatever, but on the other hand, I want to look out for my team and myself and enact whatever change I can to make the engagement go better. But as I said, I'm just a wee associate. So how do I go about navigating and speaking up about my concerns while being so young in my career? Can you think of any ways to make our understaffed team be able to accomplish more without adding additional people or cocaine?
Wow. Love it. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Coming out of nowhere there at the end.
So let's start with mindset. To put my HR hat on.
Yeah, let's start with mindset.
Ever off. Okay, mindset. You are not a wee little associate. So Liz Wiseman wrote a book called Impact Players. And it's essentially about how you can be a leader regardless of your title. How can you make an impact no matter what job title you have? So as a wee little associate, what you have is you are tenured. You have experience and knowledge of the team and of the culture and of the higher ups that these new people don't have. So just innately, inherently, in being there longer, you can lead people through the culture of the next busy season. One way that I like to encourage people is to be a positive squeaky wheel. So to the higher ups, this wee little associate that doesn't want to do cocaine can go to their higher ups and say, hey,
grow up. Do the cocaine.
God.
Don't. I'm not condoning that.
Don't.
Unless.
Hey, higher ups, X amount of people left with everyone new here. I have proactively targeted ways that we can fill in the blank. I don't really believe in work-life balance. I think that's a value that not everyone that is a higher up esteems as their own value. So when we little people say we don't have work-life balance, that's not something that a lot of millennials and older generations value. So when we hear that, a lot of the time we're like, okay, and we don't have work-life balance. Yeah, we're a Big Four audit company. What do you expect? Of course we don't have work-life balance.
Right.
So you can't go about it like, we don't want to burn out in the next busy season. You got to go about it, I need to be effective and efficient. So
you're saying meet the leaders where they're at. Even if work-life balance is true, that's just not something they value. So they're like, okay,
all the time,
how are we going to get this done?
All the time, every time, meet the leaders where they're at. You got to understand what motivates your leader and what they fear. You can never take them off guard. So don't bring this up in a team meeting. You know, always have data to back up your facts. Hey, these are broken parts of our system that I've noticed caused all the people to leave. Let's get ahead of it with all these new people. Here's what I recommend. So I think, for this person listening, read the book Impact Players, and really adopt a mentality that's not, oh, I'm just a wee little associate. You are in the org chart, in the system, in the Big Four company. Sure you are. But I have seen people that are brand new to a company really be the most influential because they have the best ideas and they don't have an ego about it.
That's great advice. I love that. We are winding down now to the end of our episode here with Amy Lentz, Hack Your HR. We always ask, where can people find you? Can you tell us a little bit about the content that you're making out here on a daily basis? I'm obviously a follower, but for those who need to find you, want to find you, and are going to find you, how will they do so?
Yeah, my handle is HackYourHR on every social platform. I am developing a weekly one-on-one with Amy Lentz weekly email where I will share essentially my video content where I help you get ahead in your corporate job, in your life, in your relationship. I think you can take whatever I post about and apply it to every part of your life. But I have a newsletter where it's written form if people don't want to scroll social media all the time. But yeah, my handle is HackYourHR. And I just make little tiny videos that hopefully help people ask for a raise, have a hard conversation. I'm oldest daughter of 6 kids. So I've definitely taken that and transferred that skill into my social media presence where I help people with things that they write to me about.
I love it. You can also be found on LinkedIn as well. Got to build that LinkedIn audience.
Yep. And, love LinkedIn.
Amy, thank you so much for joining us, especially on leave. Good luck with
Likewise.
little one. I can truly say I empathize.
You can.
Hopefully we'll get you back on here.
I would love that.
So as always, everyone, send us your corporate confessions, ask us your questions, send in your Dear Demoteds. send that subscribe button to the HR department. Call them into HR. I mean, look, if you want to scan a QR code and send the like button a picture of any part of your body, feel free to do that as well. And as always, we will see you next time on Demoted.
Demoted.